Hello and welcome to this online in conversation with South Australian artist Ray Harris as part of the Guildhouse Collections Project in collaboration with Flinders University Museum of Art. This conversation is taking place on Kaurna land, and I acknowledge the enduring spiritual connection to country, to the sky and to the waters for Kaurna ancestors and present day and emerging Kaurna leaders and communities. My name is Nic Brown and I'm the Collections Curator at FUMA, and today I would warmly like to welcome Ray Harris to this conversation. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you.
Just to introduce you, Ray, and your practice, you work across video, performance, installation and sculpture as a means to investigate psychological complexities of the self, and best known for your darkly playful performative videos. You are almost always the protagonist, and you tend to kind of inflict real-time experiences onto your body, such as compulsive hair shampooing, vomiting rainbow glitter, and endurance cuddling life-size ice and dough bodies. And these kind of seem like really sort of quirky things to do, but within this quirkiness, you kind of also have this saccharine pop aesthetic. And to me, that really means you kind of open this space up to explore really uncomfortable and heavy duty nuances of the human condition in connection to trauma and loss. And then you also sneak in these ideas, you engage with feminist concepts of the abject, cleanliness and beauty. And the reason we're here today and having this chat is because, Ray, you were selected for this year's artist for the Guildhouse Collections Project with FUMA. And over the past several months, you've been researching FUMA's rich collection of international and Australian conceptual art. And you're currently developing a new body of work kind of in response to that collection, or using the collection as a starting point, and that will be exhibited at the FUMA Gallery in February 2021 next year. And it's this process of researching the collection and making new works, using that as a trigger to make new works that we're going to talk about today. So thank you, Ray, for joining us. And I know this is a really interesting and challenging time to be a human being living in the world, but particularly as an artist. And your project began just before the outbreak of COVID-19 in Australia. So how has the pandemic affected your project in particular for this collections project with Guildhouse?
So for me, obviously the pandemic's affected everyone, but my mother actually died right before that. So I was already quite heavily affected, and then that happened. So for me, I've just been, I don't even know what's going on. I'm on another planet. But I think as far as being able to look at the collection, it's been quite good because all the uni students have gone home, most of the staff wasn't here, so I could just come sit in a very open space by myself and still just look at the work. So, which was kind of interesting because at that point, because of everything that was going on for me, I didn't really feel like doing much of my practice or much of anything. So just to be able to come and engage with these other works was really nice, because it was a really gentle way to kind of stay connected without any pressure to be making my own work or be busy or, yeah, so I think I was quite lucky in that way, even though I had probably more unlucky circumstances than just the pandemic. It was a nice kind of gentle, just sitting down and looking at artist books and things like that. So yeah, I think I did okay in that situation.
And that's sometimes the beauty of kind of, this is in a way, it's a research-based residency. You do get a bit of headspace. And in particular, in those first few months, just not having pressure to make any work. So you can kind of switch that part of your brain off and just absorb and be in that difficult space that you've been managing this year. So what were your expectations of working with an art museum collection, and how has that process been for you?
I'm not sure exactly what I thought I expected beyond just being able to look at a whole bunch of work that I'd probably never seen before. Yeah, so I think it definitely lived up to that. And then I think I was just open to seeing what would happen. I kind of had some ideas coming into it that I think have stayed fairly on track, like they've moved a little bit, but nothing major. So, but I just wanted to kind of look at everything and let it all just absorb, and I might use it again someday, or, you know, it all just kind of sinks in there somewhere. It stays in your brain.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of intense research can really, it influences your immediate new body of work, but it can stay kind of in your ether for several years after, which is what's so special about these projects. And you have literally viewed every single work in FUMA's entire collection of conceptual art, which includes performances, so photographs and videos of artist performances, looking through artist books and documents by pioneering artists in their respective fields, such as Marina Abramovich, Sola Witt, Joseph Kassouf, Mike Parr, Stellark, and many others. Which artists were you most immediately drawn to or inspired by out of the collection?
I was always really interested to look at the performance artists like Marina Abramovich. I've looked at before in my work quite a bit, Mike Parr, and to maybe, you know, possibly sort of reenact some of these works and then see where that takes me. So that's what I kind of came in wanting to look at, and I did focus more on that. But then, you know, there's so many other interesting things that are on a completely different, coming from a completely different place. But yeah, that was the ones that I was most interested in looking at, was the performance kind of works.
And do you want to talk about Mike Parr's works? You were really drawn to this particular, we can see here on this document in the middle, repeatedly hurt yourself, that instruction or that statement. Can you talk about how you responded to that?
Yeah, so when I came in, I had this thought to look at Mike Parr's instructions, because as you can see, they're these quite specific, you know, some of them tell you exactly where to put the camera and how to film it. So I thought I might start by looking at them and even reenacting them exactly, and then not staying there, but seeing where I went. And I didn't end up reenacting them exactly, because I found these delightfully ambiguous ones like this, that just reminded me of my own work, where Mike Parr's is quite physically violent to his own body, and my work is more about the more emotional and psychological, I guess, kind of violence or trauma that we suffer. And so when I saw repeatedly hurt yourself, I thought about hurting yourself emotionally instead of physically. Yeah, so that I think was kind of the starting ground, and I really just tried to think about all those things that you do to yourself when you do hurt yourself, like you say mean things to yourself, or you put yourself down, or and then, yeah, I tried to kind of conjure up those things that you can do psychologically to sort of traumatize yourself.
Yeah, fascinating. And of course, Mike Parr is such a leading international artist, and he's influenced generations of artists. This work, this type document, is one of many from a work called his Notebooks, Volume 1 and 2. So there are two A4 ring binders, chock-a-block full of writings on ideas for performances, Mike's reflections on what he refers to as the changing nature of art in the early 70s in the Australian and international art scene. And then these reflections interjected concrete poetry style with these kind of interjections or interruptions of statements or instructions which are sometimes very violent, sometimes very poetic, and sometimes they, as you said, sometimes they are listed with really comprehensive and detailed technical directions for both the performer and the videographer. And out of this book, there are some really well-known instructions that Mike Parr has performed. And just to give the audience an example of what's in this book, some of the outcomes were hold the videos, the performances, hold your breath for as long as possible, and light a candle, hold your finger in the flame for as long as possible, which we do have in the collection, and you've viewed those performances as well, which are kind of mesmerising, both mesmerising but also very difficult to watch. And that's because Parr's work, as you say, it's known for his kind of clinical violence towards the body and these elements of extreme risk. And it's just really interesting how you just flip this, you reinterpret Mike Parr's instruction, repeatedly hurt yourself, and you flip it into an emotional narrative, so to hurt yourself emotionally. And I know another instruction by Parr really stood out to you, and we can see it written here beneath duality: chain yourself to the destiny of a tree. And that's much more poetic as well than the violence of hurt yourself repeatedly. And what is it about this directive in particular that appealed to you? And how did you approach this sort of intangible and esoteric notion of a tree's destiny? You know, what is the destiny of a tree? And then once you kind of, you know, get to that space, how do you then shackle yourself to this notion of a tree's destiny? Can you talk about that?
Yes, I can. So I saw this one and I was just, I don't know, I just found it so delightful. And I've been quite obsessed with trees for a while. If I'm waiting in traffic or wherever I am, I just always notice the movement of a tree. And I think I'm going through this strange phase where part of me actually wants to be a tree. So it just seems like a very peaceful, kind of wise, I don't know, way to be. And there's something about the way they just move in the wind. It's like they kind of just go with the flow of nature. And whereas I think as humans we often feel more pushed around by it. So when I saw that, I just thought, oh, it just really spoke to something that was already happening for me. But then going about it was a whole different thing. And I think even still, every tree I see now, I just look at it intently, like, what can I do with this tree, you know? And I just was looking at trees and thinking about it. And then I just came up with this idea of just hanging upside down, because essentially if I was a branch or a part of the tree, that's what I would do. And so I found a tree that was sort of low enough that I could fit into that hanging and not seem totally out of place. But also it was a bit of a physical, I was a lot more scared than I thought of climbing a tree and hanging upside down, and I'd keep getting leg cramps and things would happen. So it took me a while to kind of get the action down. But yeah, then I just wanted to hang there and just kind of be, you know, sway in the breeze like the branches would, and just kind of try to be a tree.
Yeah, and of course this is a still of your video, and you literally, there's a gentle breeze, and the leaves are quite, and branches are quite actively moving, and you managed to kind of capture that within your body as you move to and fro. So it's a really beautiful video. And what's really interesting is that now that you're kind of making these kind of initial works in progress that are responding to a couple of statements in Parr's work, they're actually now taking on a life of their own, and you're making more works, and now that you've made quite a number, so you're now reflecting back onto the collection and considering works that didn't initially stand out to you. So you started off, you had this period of isolation in the museum with the work, and over several months, and then you went and you had studio time making these works, and now your mind is coming back and looking at works that you did not initially stand out to you, or but now you feel like they're really resonating with you and some of the works that you're making. Can you talk about this process of now coming back to the collection again, having been in the studio for some time and making work? Let me just introduce this artist actually first, who's Ken Unsworth. I know he's particularly standing out to you now that you've started making work. And this work is 5 secular settings for sculpture as a ritual and burial piece. And that's quite an iconic early work for Unsworth. And just to contextualise what the work is, it's a series of photographs that situate his body in a variety of endurance positions, some of which he's suspended and working with the forces of gravity. And of course, there are these really immediate visual connections with some of his suspended works and your tree work. But can you talk about why you're now in your mind thinking about Ken Unsworth's work in relation to your other works that you're producing?
Yeah, I mean, I found these works quite interesting at the time, but they weren't, I guess I just found them interesting and moved on to what I was looking at. But because I was initially thinking of taking particularly Mike Parr's instructions from more of a feminist or woman's perspective. And then that sort of turned into this thing of, instead of instructions, more these kind of rituals of kind of washing and cleaning and being sort of, I don't know, part of nature, or fighting against it, or and that's when, looking back, I think these works had this ritual sort of tone about them that I could see the connections coming after. And I also was just outside a lot, just looking for things that were speaking to me, and that's where I came across kind of puddles and washing myself, and there's a lot of sort of washing kind of things. And same with that first. This work, I just saw this steaming pile of mulch, and it also really spoke to me of what was going on for me. Like, my mother was thought she was a Hindu, and when we were growing up, there were always these Hindu comic books, and they had, people going on the funeral pyre, and it kind of reminded me of that, and this, just some sort of ritualistic act of sort of cleansing or burning, or so.
And then, so this is looking about, as you say, cleansing and burning. Has a bit of esoteric kind of spiritualism about it, and connects to your recent experiences of your mother's passing and her religion and philosophy. But then here, you're staining yourself, you're dirtying yourself, and it's the female figure. Can you talk about this work?
Yeah, this again happened basically to go about this work. I just started going out in nature a lot and just experimenting with things that I was finding. And so I saw this section of the ground that was quite wet, but you can't necessarily see that it's wet. And I just lay down in it. And I noticed when I got up that it had made this imprint of a woman's body in dirt on myself. And it just made me think of all those kind of old notions of women being dirty, or, that women's bodies are dirty, or the things that they do. So it was quite a simple piece, but I just found it really interesting, the shape that it made on my clothes.
The very clearly feminine shape, or shape of the female body, is astounding, but it's also, there's this really beautiful collision of performance and video, and the monoprint, so printmaking and painting, kind of embedded in this work, which I find really interesting. You were also talking before about cleansing and cleaning. Do you want to talk about this work, cleaning yourself in a muddy puddle?
I think this is one of the first works that I tried. I think it was raining a lot at the time and there were a lot of puddles around, and I was thinking about those sort of instructive, that were almost worded like wash your face in a puddle or throw a brick on your foot, or however they were. Some of them were quite simple. And so I just thought of this notion of washing your face in a puddle that's sort of partly ritual and partly absurd, because the puddle's kind of muddy and dirty, but yeah, there could be a lot of things really tied into that. Even just the way our planet is, and the notion of water, and how accessible things are to different people. And but yeah, I think I just made it, I just thought of it more of a sort of ritualistic kind of cleansing, but in a kind of absurd way.
And it's got that beautiful reference back to the tree, or the essence of a tree, or the destiny of a tree, with those reflections in the water. I'm really, so these are just a few examples of the works in progress that you've been working on this in the studio, and I'm really excited to see how they unfold further, and particularly this idea of ritual. And it's great to see that you've used the collection as like a trigger or a starting point, and now your own works are kind of coming through, and it's a delight to see them unfold. And of course they'll be on show at the FUMA Gallery in February 2021 next year. And this exhibition, this presentation will be quite unique from earlier iterations of the Guildhouse Collections Project with FUMA, in that the curatorial methodology will be a call and response approach. So you, the artist, investigating the collection, making new responsive works, then me, the curator, through the collection, responding to your work, responding to your new work. So we've got the artist response to the collection, and the collection responding back to the artist. And I think that method of putting on this show is really interesting, and I'm excited to see how that unfolds. Thank you so much for speaking with me today, Ray, and for sharing insights into your research process and the development of your new body of work.
Thank you for having me, and probably everything I was saying didn't flow quite as well as I would like, but you know, it's been a strange year, so.
What you've said, Ray, has been perfect, and it's really generous actually hearing from you the intricacies in your practice, and the steps and the thought processes that get you from step A to you know, step Z, which is the making of a work. So thanks so much for being generous with your insights into your practice, and it's been good to chat.
Yeah, good to chat to you too.